Today is Thursday, the 16th of July, 2020. My name is Kwame Owusu Danso. Welcome to Good Morning Africa. Welcome to the Newspaper Review segment here on Pan-African Television. Super excited to come away with this particular edition. We get to spend a lot of time together. The show, as you always know, is very interactive, so you can share with us what your thoughts are, and we will be more than willing to read the messages here for you. The WhatsApp number is active, is 0260846539. They say a face shield is better than no shield at all. So today I'm managing this face shield. Subsequently, you see me with my face shield and my nose mask at the same time. So pardon me just for today. And let me also quickly remind you that we are streaming live on Facebook, facebook.com/Pan-African Television. And so for those of you who are watching us via Facebook, you can also send us your views, your comments, your contributions, and I will read them here for you on the show. We're also on YouTube. So you can watch us on YouTube as well, youtube.com/Pan-African Television. I'm also going to be doing a Facebook watch party on my personal Facebook page, which is Kwame Owusu Danso, and so you can also watch the morning show on my page as well. Let me quickly take you through the topics that we have tabled for our conversation today before I introduce my wonderful panelists for today. So we're looking at an African story, which says Zambian president denies funding Rwanda rebels. Zambian president denies funding Rwanda rebels. And that story has been captured by the Daily Graphic. It's on page 5 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. Some of the local stories are: Banda Council wants probe into murder of youth. Banda Council wants probe into murder of youth. I'm sure you're very much aware of the gentleman who was murdered in Banda as a result of a little altercation that ensued between himself and some persons who appear or who have been described as persons belonging to the NPP. Shameless EC gives lame excuse for inflating registration figures in Asante region. Shameless EC gives lame excuse for inflating registration figures in Asante region. Daily Post reported this particular story, and it's on page 6 of the newspaper. We are suffering. Road contractors weep over non-payment of debt. Over non-payment of debt. The New Crusading Guide also reported this one. 4 teacher unions demand closure of schools. 4 teacher unions demand closure of schools. Ghanaian Times. And these are the topics that we have selected for today's conversation. I've been joined in the studios by Honorable Inusah Fuseini, who is still doing wonders in the northern part of this country. Good morning to you, Honorable.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
All right. Richard Asante is also here seated. Richard in his black nose mask and his black African wear. Good morning to you. All right, and Mr. Pratt is also here seated. Good morning, sir. Now, so these are the topics that we're going to be discussing today. Let me quickly start with Honorable Inusah Fuseini on the African story. So we're starting the conversation with the Zambian story and the fact that the Zambian president has denied funding Rwanda rebels. Sir.
Well, as customary on the platform, let me extend my sincere regards and facilitation to my co-panelists, your viewers and listeners, and those who are following us on Facebook. Now, Thursday is a wonderful day, and today we begin our story with an African story. And it's all about the Lesotho region. Lesotho region. The region has been quite unstable. The region has tremendous natural resources. The region had Belgians, the French, sometimes the English, the Portuguese, all operating around that area. Because if you look at the policy of the colonial administration of that area, none of them went to that area thinking to settle. I mean, they just went to exploit the resources. So that area is an area that has not realized development in terms of infrastructure that was to assist in the development of the areas to condition the life of the people, both the indigenous and the foreigners. Now that area too did not witness a deliberate policy to train and imbibe knowledge in people who could take over from the colonialists. And so when the colonialists were forced to leave, they left a vacuum. Now, to be able to rule, the colonialists also engaged in what came to be known as divide and rule. This story is about Rwanda, and the case of Rwanda is a case that is reflected in almost all those countries. Rwanda had people of different make, if you want. I don't want to use color because that would be racist, because all the people were blacks, Africans. But Rwanda had people who looked more slim, who had pointed nose, thin lips, and at another part of Rwanda you had people who had broad nose, broad lips, thick set, and then you had a third class of people who cut between those who had the Fulani type disposition and those who had the typical African tradition. So when the Belgians and the French came in, they sort of misconstrued that those who had features similar to their features, pointed nose, thin lips, who were lighter in skin, were somehow superior to those who had broad nose, broad lips, hips, and those things in terms of women. So you see, that sowed the seeds of destabilization in the Rwandan area. And they called them the Tutsis and the Hutus. Now, countries around Rwanda, countries around Togo, including Rwanda, as a Congo, countries around Congo, have suffered destabilization to the extent that there are armies operating in Congo that are funded by nations outside Congo, African nations outside the Congo. In fact, even now, we can extend the argument to include nations outside the African continent, because Russian mercenary soldiers have been arrested in Congo. And so, if it were the colonialists still embarking on their colonial agenda of subjugating Africa and exploiting our resources, probably one would have understood that we need as Africans to come together to be able to fight the colonialists, to be able to fight the imperialists, to be able to fight the exploitators. But today's African story is quite disturbing to the extent that it is reported that Zambian President President Edgar Lunga, has supported or is supporting dissidents and rebel groups in Zambia to destabilize Rwanda. I mean, if that story is true, then it goes back to the notion and thinking that some African leaders are still puppets of colonial imperial authorities. Because what benefit will you get as a Zambian if you destabilize Rwanda? Yes, Rwanda has experienced tremendous genocide. You need to read the books on Rwanda to see how the undesirable elements in Rwanda carried out what they call ethnic cleansing. Just cutting off limbs, head, butchering people and leaving them to die. The massacre stopped long ago. Rwanda has started the process of rebuilding itself. So why would any country, is it envy or jealousy or wickedness? Why would any country want to reverse the gains that Rwanda is making? Yes, Rwanda is not perfect because we can't say that there is democratic inclusion. We can't say that there is enough space for other political actors in Rwanda. But within the limited context of freedom and power in Rwanda, Rwanda is making tremendous strides. So why will any country want to destabilize it? I think that this is a time for the AU, African Union, and the regional grouping, the Lusophone group, to come together to call the spade a spade. I mean, we as a people, we as Africans, must set standards for ourselves and our governments through the AU and ensure that countries who fail to comply with those standards are called out. That is the only way that we can serve as peer, I mean, we can peer check each other. And so this is work for the African Union. This is work for the Lusophone group. This is work for the United Nations. I mean, when we go to war and kill ourselves, they are forced to spend the few resources that they would have spent for other humanitarian activities on salvaging the situation. Rwanda was a disaster. When the United Nations came in later, it had already reached a point where they could not stamp their authority. We lost great people in Rwanda. So, Ega, I'm in Ghana here, I'm not in Zambia. I'm not a Zambian. But I think that as a leader, you have a responsibility beyond Zambia to ensure that Africa is stable and Africa develops. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Inusah Fuseini. Richard.
Good morning to my senior colleagues on the panel and our good self, and also our amazing viewers across the world. And before I go to the story, it is important to re-emphasize and also admit and point out the sort of successes that your station and your platform is chopping.
Thank you.
Yesterday I happened to chance upon the discussion being held, and it was being led by Uncle Pratt watched it on the Facebook. I was just tempted to see how far-reaching those discussions are being viewed by the, particularly the young generation, those who could be found on Facebook. And around the time that the program had started, I saw in excess of 7,000. That was quite a number, because looking at the timing of the program being aired, I was extremely comforted, and I was also excited to see those numbers. It means that even if that is only on Facebook, and the program I just started for about 10 minutes or so, it means that in the course of the program, the numbers will go up. It tells you that, I mean, you are doing some great work out there. Getting those numbers on Facebook, if you understand data and you understand how things works, for somebody to have data and decides to spend that amount of data to watch a television station program live, it tells you what it is.
Thank you.
So I feel like you are doing such a great work. People don't see those things, but because I'm into IT, understand how these things are, and I was quite excited to see that. I think that you are doing such a great job out there, and I think you will continue doing that.
Thank you.
The next thing will be the African story. I think we know the history of Rwanda, what they've gone through over the years, the genocide, the fact that the world watched and paid deaf ears to the cries and allowed them to go through such mayhem, and what they've been able to turn their country around over the period. I think it will be very terrible on any part of the world, or even any individual, particularly an African, to support or do anything that will go further to damage what they built over the period. you might want to talk about all kinds of things. You might want to talk about the kind of democracy they practice out there. You might want to talk about the level of press freedom and all that. But the point is that there's one integral thing that we need to understand about what the social story of Rwanda is. Every country will have its own negatives and positives, so are every human being. But looking at where Rwanda has been able to position itself, literally becoming a torchbearer within the African continent, showing you how to turn your negatives into positives, where they've been able to at least build a solid economic fundamentals and foundation, where when you see the country and where they've been able to build their institutions. I mean, when you go to Rwanda, aside maybe the president that is seen to be extremely strong, you rather see that the other energies are being pushed on institutions, where you see proper digitization is happening, where you see things really happening, a modern state being built, educational infrastructure being built, road infrastructure being built. So Rwanda is literally showing the way, and I think a lot of African countries do go there even to study and understand how they've been able to come to this stage. Particularly looking at what happened to them a couple of years ago. So I'm happy to hear that a Zambian president is denying that sort of allegation. I hope it is true. Not these politicians trying to pay lip service, try to deceive the whole world, and behind the scenes trying to undermine Rwanda. I think we should understand that as Africans, we have a common destiny, and we ought to grow together, build together, and succeed together. That is the only way we can lift our people from poverty. If we do not do that, and we decide to tear each other apart, undermine each other, what we end up doing is that we will destroy ourselves. That will send our youth or younger generation into captivity elsewhere. That is why last week I think we discussed the issue of migration, where people are moving and dying on the various. Yes, I mean it tells you that if we have been able to build ourselves and we've been able to solidify our front, we'll be able to do a lot of things. Because I mean, if countries within the sub-region, even Africa, West African sub-region, are to trade among ourselves, there are a lot of things that Nigeria needs that Ghana can provide. A lot of things Ghana needs that Nigeria can provide. That alone gives us a lot of advantage. When we go to Kenya, there are a lot of things that Kenya is well versed in, that the neighboring countries within that area could help. So if we can trade among ourselves and see each other as partners, that is why some of us, when it comes to the issue of South Africa and xenophobia, we condemn those beyond certain terms, because we realize that those sort of mentality and the thinking that the Ghanaian is extremely different from a South African or another person from another part of the world within the African continent is something that we need to disabuse our minds. Let's look at what our forebears did, the way they were able to unify and also try to find a way of fighting together, even sharing resources to assist each other, to position each other. I think we ought to support Rwanda in whatever they are doing. Let's assist them. Let's assist each other, but not undermine each other.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pratt.
Well, the allegation is being made in court. There is a Rwandan who is facing trial for leading a rebel group and trying to destabilize Rwanda. And he claims that the president of Zambia actually offered the rebel group $1 million, and that he's actually paid $500,000 to the rebel group and so on. Now, this allegation is interesting to the extent that it confirms or raises suspicions about the possibility of African leaders violating the Charter of the African Union, and also violating the various charters of the various regional groups that we have in Africa. The AU Charter is clear on the non-interference of member states in the affairs of the internal affairs of other member states. It's very clear. And yet, over the years, many African leaders have violated this charter, the provisions of this charter, with impunity. It is not about today. I mean, it has a long history. What is worrying is that reactionary neo-colonial governments want to replicate themselves in their neighboring countries. And if you take the case of the Nkrumah administration, it is very clear. Nkrumah's government was actively sabotaged by Togo and La Côte d'Ivoire. Togo under the first Yadima, and La Côte d'Ivoire under Houphouët-Boigny. And indeed, if you look at the historical record, we complain a lot about the Dankwa-Buzia tradition being responsible for bomb explosions in Ghana and so on. All those bombs came from Togo and La Côte d'Ivoire. Indeed, leaders of the opposition to Nkrumah actually settled in La Côte d'Ivoire and Togo, from where they planned their diabolical, machinations against the people of Ghana. So that historical record is there, is there. And it's not just about Nkrumah. I mean, Modibo Keita of Mali was subverted actively by imperialism using African, surrogates. So was Sekou Touré and many other progressive African leaders. And I think we should frown on the practice of neo-colonial despotic regimes in Africa, sponsoring the overthrow of governments that they see as their rivals, or governments that they see as being substantially different from them. I don't buy the story of a glorious Rwanda under Kagame. It is not true. And if you examine the facts, it's not true. We don't have a glorious Rwanda under the... No. But there are many countries that are neat, which are oppressive.
But you need to visit that place.
Yes. I mean, I know the story of South Africa under apartheid.
Yes.
And uneducated, and I mean politically uneducated people and so on, used to go to South Africa and come and say, what? The roads are so well paved, things are orderly, and so on. Those people were not looking at Soweto. They were not looking at the shanty towns and so on. And they were ignoring the fact that an apartheid system was in place. Yeah. The worst form of racism was being practiced by South Africa. So those who go to countries and they start looking at pavements and they start looking at roads and bridges and making their judgments, live on an illusion. And I don't live on an illusion when I come to look at Rwanda. I look at many concrete things about Rwanda. Rwanda's interventions, for example, in the DR Congo, are unforgivable. Yeah. They are clearly unforgivable. Its militarist approach to things are unforgivable. I mean, recently look at the woman who contested Paul Kagame. She had no chance of winning, and yet look at what the state did to her. For me, that's not an example. That's not how I want Ghana to be, and so on. But let's put that aside. Zambia has one of the most repressive regimes in Africa, excessively repressive regimes in Africa. I mean, our own experience of Pan-African television should teach us a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we sent a team to Zambia to go and cover the inauguration of the Socialist Party of Zambia. Look at how they were treated. They were arrested. You understand? Some of the people who came from other countries were actually deported on arrival and so on, just to cover the inauguration of a legally registered political party. The Cuban ambassador in Lusaka was actually sent home. Yes, sir. And the Cuban ambassador is a very good friend of mine, very calm person, very mature diplomat and so on. He was sent out on flimsy excuses and so on. So Zambia is in a terrible state. The violation of the rights of citizens. Can you believe that the president of Zambia actually has the effrontery to declare that Zambia is a Christian state and to wage a campaign of slander against those he perceives to be non-Christian and so on? And it's incredible. What's happening in Zambia is incredible. Look, the Zambian authorities are feeling seriously threatened by the emergence of a socialist party in Zambia. The Socialist Party of Zambia is threatening the establishment. I don't know whether it is going to win the elections or not. But it is providing a workable alternative to the nonsense that has been going on in Zambia over a long period of time. It is talking about access to education, expanding access to education, expanding access to social services, It is talking about the people of Zambia taking their destiny into their own hands. It is offering a credible alternative. You understand? And because it's offering a credible alternative, the Zambian authorities have panicked. And I'm not surprised that these allegations are coming on, because in their panic, they are kicking left, right, and center. They are behaving like a bull in a china shop. You understand? And destroying everything in their face and so on. Look, whether they like it or not, the socialist alternative in Africa is viable. And the socialist alternative in Africa will thrive and succeed. So all these new colonial regimes should better get ready, because there's going to be an avalanche, an upsurge of socialism in Africa. And we're going to try and live by the tenets that Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Modibo Keita, and others taught us. And they better get ready. Repression is not going to stop the re-emergence of a socialist Africa.
Thank you. Very reassuring. Well, if just dawned as you're watching the Newspaper Review segment here on your #1 station, Pan-African Television, with me, Kwame Owusu Danso. So let me remind you again that the WhatsApp number is very much active. It's 02608465339. And we're also streaming live on Facebook, facebook.com/Pan-African Television. We've just dealt with the African story, which has to do with Zambia, the fact that the Zambian president has denied funding Rwanda rebels. We're coming back home to discuss this very disturbing issue which happened in Banda, and the fact that the council wants probe into the murder of the young man who was stabbed to death in Banda. Let me just read a little bit of the story for you. The chiefs of Banda Traditional Council in the Bono region are calling on the Inspector General of Police, the National Security, and the Military High Command to probe, as a matter of urgency, I beg your pardon, probe the circumstances that led to the killing of a young man called Silas Chambewulo. According to the chief, the killing of Silas was as a result of misunderstanding that ensued between supporters of the new Patriotic Party and that of the National Democratic Congress in the ongoing voters registration exercise at Banda Hinkro. So the incident, the chief claimed that a supporter of Joe Dankwa sent some people to a community called Inshiri to register them. But the NDC agents there challenged them, and that led to the misunderstanding which ended there. He said later, supporters of the candidate went to another community called Kabrono and mounted a roadblock and stopped an oncoming passenger vehicle and identified Silas to be a native of Banda Hinkro. They brought him out of the vehicle and subsequently stabbed him to death. Silas, whom he said was a fresh graduate of a teacher training college, was traveling and was neither part of the NDC nor the MPP, but a victim of circumstance. Richard, it's in your region, right?
I think in my region. I think this is a very terrible news, a very terrible story. I think people ought to understand something, that we have laws in this country, and you have no right taking the laws into your own hands and meting out punishment or sanctions, including murder, to people because you think you disagree with them or not, or based on their actions or inactions. I mean, for some of these things, you listen to it and you read the story and you realize that, I mean, those involved in this heinous crime need to be dealt with according to the law. There's no way that we can allow this to persist in this 21st century. Particularly when people go to that extent, even if he has done something wrong, you accost him, and you so further went ahead to kill the person. What has he done to deserve that? And all these things, we are hearing that it is linked to registration. Why should it happen? Why should that be the case? Simply exercise your God-given and constitutionally mandated right of registration as a Ghanaian. That would give you to exercise your franchise when the time comes for us to vote. But you went ahead to perpetrate some of these crimes, and these things ought to be dealt with. For me, we cannot allow this to continue. It is time we let political actors and those who follow various political parties to understand one important. Crime ought not to be given political coloration. If members within the NPP go out there to commit a crime. Those individuals equally belong to churches, families, and all that, whatnot. So what is of essence is that we allow the laws to deal with them. The moment we try to allow political parties to sort of shield or protect people who involve themselves in some of these criminal activities, what it does is that it emboldens them. And the next time they go on such a drive, they come back, they're thinking that the political institutions that they belong to will offer them the buffer or the support to prevent them from facing the full rigors of the law. And I think that all the political parties ought to condemn this. I don't know the political affiliations of these individuals, but I heard the mother cry. You see, you know what? I spent all my life selling food and doing all kinds of businesses to sustain my child. My child just graduated. I have not even had a chance of seeing him. And this is what happens to my child. And this is a very saddening situation that I think all of us will have to deal with the situation. I mean, we are hearing all kinds of stories. And sometimes when you hear some of them, you realize that it's just gone up too much. And we ought to stop it. The various political parties ought to stop it. The thing that cause some of these things, it's not right. It doesn't really make sense. Absolutely no sense for anybody to kill anybody for whatever reason. You have no right. Even those who have been given death sentences by the courts for how many years now? All the presidents that we had refused to sign for these people to be killed. We are even running away from that when the laws of the land. So who are you as an individual to go out there causing that and killing people? Why? What should not happen? I mean, we have to place premium on our lives. And I always say that no matter where we find ourselves, there's something that is bigger than these politics that we are involved in and other things that we are involved in. What is bigger ought to be the Ghanaian factor, the Ghanaianness. That ought to drive us. That we are one of the same people. We are just chosen to belong to various political parties based on certain ideologies. Yeah. That's my senior believes in NDC, that NDC is the way to Ghana achieving greater heights. I do believe that NPP given opportunity provides better and other opportunity for the Ghanaian and also position this country in a better pedestal. Mr. Pratt has his own views on what ought to be done because he believes in the socialist ideas. That's the way forward. It is like somebody choosing to be a Catholic, somebody saying I want to be a Pentecostal, another person says, okay, I'm going to worship some tree or something. That's what the person decides to do with their life. So people ought to be allowed to do that. And in the expression of those rights, we ought to make sure that we do not go out there perpetuating crime. It adds nothing to ourselves. It doesn't add anything to the country. It rather creates a major problem for all of us. I hate a situation where we live in a country and we created this whole thinking that we are enemies within ourselves. No. I've said it on this platform several times. I'm saying that I have businesses where those who are running them are NDC members. I don't really care because those people are efficient. For instance, when you go to the water with somebody who is in charge of my business over there, the CEO over there, is an NDC person. I care. Have people who are MPP running certain my business, have people working for me, work from. It doesn't really matter. What is of relevance is that these people are efficient. So let's judge people based on the content of their character, their ability to deliver, and not the political persuasions that they belong to, not the religious affiliations that they belong to, not the tribal affiliations that they belong to. Those things do not help, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't help anybody. I come from the Buhu region. My wife comes from the Volta region. Does it really matter? That is where my heart took me. And we have a beautiful family we've been building over the years. So those are the things that I want us to live by, the cardinal principles that we need to understand or to drive us. So those who are out there thinking that those are the top enemies, that's never true. You could see that when Sir John passed on, the sort of tribute that came from members of the NDC and other political parties. It tells you that over the period, despite the fact that we sit on TVs or radios and castigate each other, criticize each other, whether constructive or unconstructive, we still share certain bonds. And that is, we are good friends, brothers and all that. And those are the things that we need to understand.
But Richard, the lack of condemnation from, political actors and political leaders, perhaps, is what is emboldening these people. I agree. Colizada was pepper sprayed. Nobody talked about it.
You see, this thing have persisted. The funny thing is, when we were in opposition, I had a opportunity of petitioning the then Chief Justice, the IGP, and even other international bodies about the conduct of Naba Abdullahi.
Okay.
I wrote a long petition. I mean, those times I was doing a lot of advocacy on these matters. I wrote a petition to them, even asking the IGP to invite him because he said certain things on radio. You cannot say this about only NDC members. Because there is an NDC and a brother to Mr. Collins Dauda, Honorable Collins Dauda. There are other people within the MP people in certain parts of the country who are possibly doing similar things. Do you understand that? So that is why when I speak about matters, I talk about the fact that take away the politics. Look at the person. This is your brother here. Do you understand that? It is your brother we are dealing with. If somebody pepper spray Mr. Collins Dauda, the Honorable Collins Dauda, it ought not to happen. Absolutely. Why will you go to police station or go to any place with pepper spray in your pocket? Preconceived intentions. So I mean, the mental intent to commit crime is so manifested in the conduct of certain individuals within society. They move about thinking that here I am, I'm ready to go and cause mayhem. Why should that happen? Why should anybody allow that to happen? Beating each other, going there with macho men and all those things. Those things ought not to happen in this 21st century. I mean, there are things that we need to fight and destroy. These are not the matters that we need to fight and destroy. The poverty, the diseases, the coronavirus. If you have power, give us some solution to coronavirus. Let's all deal with it and fight it. The matters that confront us, that kills us, that destroy the societal fiber, what binds us together. Give us those things, but not using our energies on matters like this, and hurting each other and killing each other. It doesn't make sense.
Thank you very, very, very much. Honorable.
Listening to Richard Asante, I feel pains in my heart. I feel pains in my heart because I have contested 4 elections. 4 elections in this country. I was part. I stood elections. I was slapped by an MPP activist because I said they shouldn't register children. We are a country. We want our children to grow up to be useful and responsible. And even at that age, we are already exposing them to dishonesty. I was slapped, Richard, by an MPP activist. He's now my friend, but he slapped me. What? The child probably could vote for me. The child probably could vote for me. But it is totally wrong as a country to encourage children at that age to begin to engage in dishonesty. If we have values, that was my crime. I wasn't saying that the child is going to vote MPP or NDC. I said, let's instill values in our children. I have children now. I have 2 children now who are below voting age. One, if you look at her, you will think that she can go and register and vote. I said, no. The law says you must be 18, don't register. We must instill values in our children. If you form a gangster party, that's what happens. That's what happens. When the Ayawasu West Wagon matter happened, and this MPP should have condemned it and not condemned the white paper that was issued. It emboldens people to misbehave. I am a ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. And I told them that when Nana Akufo-Addo brought the bill, I said that the bill was suffering from conceptual issues. What was he seeking to control? That is what we are facing now. Why was Issa Mobla killed? Why was he killed? Because he opposed a political party. That was his death sentence. He was a CPP guy. Mr. Pratt knows him. He did nothing. He was a businessman. But he supported even MPP in the 2000 elections. He wasn't killed. He wasn't killed. When, after the killing of the Yana, he said this is unacceptable. And switched over and opposed MPP. They killed him. And you know how they killed him? They sent people to his house that they were looking for him. as a dutiful citizen of this country, he reported himself to the police. And at the police station, soldiers came and took him, and they returned his dead body. Gangster party. Gangster. Kwesi Mintim, you know the MPP chairman who opposed, NDC was not going to win in Kwesi Mintim in the first place. Western region. Have you forgotten? Because of his stance, they doused his kiosk with petrol and burnt him inside. That's what the gangster party does. Tolong constituency. There was an MPP chairman. MPP chairman. He is in Tali now. His hand cannot be stable. He was MPP chairman until NDC elected their candidate, Razak, who is closely related to the stool or the skin in Tolong. Then the chairman said, oh, I can't campaign effectively. This is my sister's son. I'm his uncle. So I can't campaign effectively. So can you allow me to sit back so that my vice will... Because if I campaign against my sister's child, it will be too immoral. He was followed up to his farm, knocked down unconscious, and the vehicle driven over his hand. Gangster party. Gangster. Wow. Insofar as you were unable to control the disturbances at Ayawaso. We were here, you remember that day? That day we were here,
we're here.
When the guns were being shot.
Yeah.
We were here. We were here. When Nana Akufo-Addo won, gangsters went into a public building, dragged down the head of security of the Ashanti region, subjected him to serious assault, destroyed public property. They were arrested. When they were sent to court, a group arising from them stormed the court and released their colleagues who were. That's what the gangster party does. Gangsterism has taken roots in this country. You remember the MPP headquarters, the fight between the Golga Bulldogs and the other vigilante group? What was their name?
Which one? Invisible Forces.
Invisible Forces.
Yeah.
It was right at the MPP headquarters. Invisible Forces against Bolga Bulldogs. And Peace Council is sitting now saying that it wants to control. That had been legitimate even in the MPP today. It is rumored that somebody is responsible for the gangsters. The gangsters. So you see, Richard, I totally agree with you. It's your choice to be in MPP. And you are of a sympathetic heart. But all of us, if I tell you, sometimes when I remember, I weep in my heart. I was driving my car from Accra to Tamale. I was stopped 8 times with Parliament sticker on it. Parliament sticker 8 times under Kufo. The last stop was at Bupe. Searching with parliamentary sticker on it. And you know what they did? All the policemen from the time I started, we started searching me from Ansawam. All the policemen who appeared to stop me and search me, none had name tag. This matter I even discussed with Rollins. None had a name tag. And that is what we are seeing today. This is not what we are seeing today. But you see, the sun moves around, the earth moves around the sun. There will always be Ghana, and governments will change.
I know it's your time, but the point is that is why I want
Ejura MP.
You cannot talk about violence and what has happened in our political dispensation without mentioning every political party, with the exception possibly CPP and other smaller parties. NDC, you can list a litany of them across the country.
Well,
that NDC officials and all kinds of people.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Yeah.
You can go to whatever. You can mention all kinds of things. People were beaten, officials have been beaten, and those have been killed. You can mention it.
I'll give you,
Ejura today. Haven't you read it? Haven't you read Ejura?
No, this was about last week.
Last week, the MP was going around, and it's normal. If you have an interest in elections, you go around. He was subjected to severe beating. The MP. Why? Why was he beaten? Collins Dauda has been MP since Nkrumah was in Guinea. And still he's beaten. Because of the notion. I'm surprised that you are even saying this. Your children will suffer it one day in your party. You are from Bono, you have married from Volta region. They will tell them that they are not from Bono. Your party, that's how they behave. That's how they behave. My brother, don't.
No. The young man who has been killed is an MPP person. So where lies the line of relationship?
We have been told. I mean, I'm telling you.
So it doesn't support the argument.
So we have been told by Dr. Patrick Osekofo of the University of Ghana that if you don't know, you ought to know that vigilantism poses the most veritable threat to our December elections.
True.
Because, and sometimes I am tempted to hold the Electoral Commission responsible. They have made the stakes so high. Everybody going to register today, and next week I'm going to go and register. You are looking at what? The December elections. The stakes are so high because the Electoral Commission decided to implement its mandate in an absurd and irrational manner. Has brought forward so immediately they need to go and register, and people will do anything to go and register. Why are we having these problems? MPP is using its resources, and MPP candidates are using their resources to bash people. Everywhere you are hearing that they are bashing people. Why? Is it not the case that the people in the constituency determine who becomes their leader?
Absolutely.
So why will you bash people to go and distort the outcome of the elections? In Napanduru, as I speak to you, an MPP, NDC guy, has been sent to jail. I mean, has been sent to court because he recognized a person who came down from Togo to register. And he said, you can't register, I know you are from Togo. And the MPP guy said, you must register, he must register. Then they have a fracas. He's been arrested, he's appearing before court. If you have resources, that's how you use it. To bash people. Everywhere they are bashing people. Tolong, the NYEP coordinator just threatened another person in Yankpala. Because they were bashing people not from Tolong. Not from Yankpala constituency, not from Tolong constituency, to go and register, to distort the outcome of the elections. The bus reached Yankpala, the person said, you are not the Gombes, you are not from even Tolong. Why are you going there? The SPC says we should come and register and vote for him. Is that how we run elections in this country? I've always said in Parliament that something is wrong with our democracy. You have elections for people within the constituency to determine who becomes their MP. And today between the Tolong constituency and Tamale Southern constituency, there's a fight. ABA is laughing all the way to Parliament. Because the PC in Tolong has come to move people from Sanergo, MPP people from Sanergo, to Tolong to go and register and vote for him. There's a fight. Why is that mad rush for power? Why? Kwesi Annan, the head of security, says the vigilantism. If Nana Akufo-Addo doesn't know, the vigilantes have become so powerful because of the reward that they get. So we can now control them. That's why they've become so powerful. Even today, as I say, I'm going home. In fact, I must confess sometimes I become afraid. Am I part of the target? Am I being listed? What culture are we building? Culture of fear and terror? I don't know. Is that how we practice democracy in this country? I don't know. You can be attacked at will by anybody. Sometimes you are exercised and you are afraid. Your wife is telling your children that they don't go out. Why? Is that how we practice democracy? Why don't you let everybody, like you have said, express his free will and pick the person he wants to? Why? A Democrat, a person who projected himself as a Democrat, Nana Akufo-Addo, must live up to his words. We are so disappointed that you allow the country to fall into this disastrous abyss, that people are dying because of elections, because they want to exercise their franchise.
Thank you very much, Honorable Inusah. 0260846539 is the WhatsApp number, and we're also streaming live on Facebook. I've seen the numbers are shooting up on Facebook. Thank you very much. Keep watching and keep streaming on Facebook as well. Mr. Pratt, please, let's hear from you.
Well, I think that today there are two things for which I'm grateful to my co-panelist, Richard Asante. First is his commendation of Pan-African television and his appreciation of the fact that the station really is growing. It's become so big and so on. Not many people from where he comes from would like to acknowledge the truth, and the fact that he's acknowledged the truth is most pleasing, and we thank him. The other reason for which I think that I ought to be grateful to Mr. Richard Asante is the fact that he gave me this face mask. I came to the studio with one, but it got destroyed before we started the program. And he gave me this one. And I must confess, this is one of the most comfortable face masks that I've ever worn. You know, I'm always struggling with it and so on. This is so comfortable. I'm able to talk and breathe normally and so on. So, Richard, we thank you very much. And I understand that he makes them himself. Yeah. So perhaps he should make a lot more and give to us for free. You know, I feel very comfortable in this face mask. You know, very, very comfortable. Richard, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful to you. Look, why should anybody die in a voter registration exercise? I've been around the world playing all kinds of roles in elections and so on. And when I come back home, I feel sad. I mean, if you listen to the international media, you get the impression that Venezuela is on fire and so on. I've been an election observer in Venezuela where nobody died, nobody was stabbed, and I didn't see anybody even being beaten in Venezuela. I traveled across Venezuela as an election observer. And what I'm seeing in Ghana, it's terrible compared to my experiences in Venezuela. And I'm ashamed, I'm completely ashamed of what is happening in Ghana. Yes, Richard, you may be right. It may be true that the guy who was killed is an NPP member. But I've just read the police report in graphic, which says that his killer suspected him of being an NDC member. That's the key. It is not his actual membership which is important, but the motive. They killed him because they suspected that he was an NDC man. That's the police report. You understand? Now, having read the police account of what happened in the graphic, I'm even more worried. The police in the region is saying that they had reports that some people were going to cause mayhem, destroy property, and so on. So they mobilized to the scene. And the people who had started mounting roadblocks, breaking the law and so on, they only told them to stop breaking the law, and they left. It was after they had left that they got a report that this killing had taken place, and they came back. People breaking the law, people who are breaking the law in relation to a registration exercise were told to stop, go home, sin no more. Incredible. Now, the police is telling us that up till now, not one person has been arrested or invited by the police for investigation. I'm alarmed. I'm wondering if those who perpetrated this crime were members of the Convention People's Party, whether this is the situation we would have had. No arrest, nothing. How many hours after the incident? It's incredible. The neutrality of the police is being called into question once again. And I'm ashamed again by the conduct of our police establishment. I'm completely, ashamed by the conduct of the police establishment. I became very alarmed when Ayawaso West Wagon happened, because I saw Ayawaso West Wagon as an opportunity to stamp out hooliganism in our elections. Unfortunately, we made that opportunity slip through our hands. And even when the government-appointed Commission of Inquiry, headed by no mean a person, Emil Short, which had somebody who is now on the Supreme Court as a member, who had a former Inspector General of Police as a member, and so on, who had the head of the legal department then of JIMPA as a secretary and so on, wrote its report. Government rejected that report in a white paper. I mean, it's scandalous. If you had handled Ayawaso West Wagon properly, it would have sent a strong signal that hooliganism would not be tolerated. Most of the time I don't like claiming vindication because sometimes it doesn't serve any purpose. To come and sit here and say I'm vindicated, what purpose does it serve? You know what? I made the point when the political parties were being made to sign declarations that they would be peaceful, they would dissolve vigilance. I said, look, this is a useless exercise. This is cheap propaganda meant to pull wool over our faces and so on. They went and signed all the declarations. The vigilantes are still working, active. They are still killing. They are still maiming. They are still injuring. They are still beating people. So it is not what you sign on paper which is important. It's a certain culture that needs to develop. And that culture springs out of a commitment to a new kind of politics. A new kind of politics which insists on persuading the electorate to cast his ballot in favor of different development options. That's what is important. All the gerrymandering and so on is crookish. Even the mafia doesn't operate that way. And I think we should put an end to these kinds of practices. So many things are happening which are repugnant in the extreme. I mean, these days, you sit in your house, you wake up in the morning, or you go to Facebook or so, and a statement has been issued in your name. And you read the statement, and it's so strange, you don't understand where it's coming from. I mean, the other time, I was shocked when friends started calling me and telling me that, oh, they've seen that I'm advocating the smoking of marijuana as a cure to COVID-19. I said, where did that happen? So quickly, I went on Facebook, I went on Twitter, everywhere, and just everywhere. It never happened. And they attributed that to a statement I made on Peace FM. So I called the Peace FM people and I said, check your records. So they came up and said it wasn't true. But a lot of damage had been done. Because even 3 days ago, somebody raised the issue with me. He hadn't heard the denials and so on. That is part of the hooliganism in our politics. I mean, today, I came to Pan-African television and I see this headline, suspend 2020 elections, Kwesi Pratt tells Akufo-Addo and Mahama. Where is this coming from? Possible. And then they attribute it to Peace FM. I went to Peace FM on Tuesday and I was asked specifically that if by December 7th, the COVID-19 thing has spread so much that we can't have elections. What would I do? And I said, look, we made the constitution, and that if there is proper consensus, we can set the constitution aside. Or that even if there is proper consensus, and we start thinking now, we can take steps to make sure that the elections would not take place. And that if the NPP, NDC, and the other parties agreed, we can come up with a multiplicity of scenarios which would make the election irrelevant, which would ensure that the election doesn't take place. One of the things that I spoke about was that it is possible to have some kind of a coalition government which would involve all the minority parties and the ruling parties for the time being that we are fighting COVID-19. Is that the story? Is that the story? You know, look, I think we should be very careful. I've seen many countries completely destroyed as a result of election disputes. I've seen many countries which have been destroyed. Look at what is happening in La Côte d'Ivoire today. Alassane Ouattara went and took over power. He's never been able to exercise effective power. Never been able to exercise effective power. Now he's confronted with a case where his prime minister, who was his preferred choice for presidential candidature of his party, dying, you know. His vice president has also resigned. Giron Soro, whose armed forces took him to power, he's split with Giron Soro. Today, Giron Soro is in exile. Now they're desperately trying to stop Gbagbo from coming back to La Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah.
And now, Alassane Ouattara says that he's thinking about coming back to contest the elections in spite of the fact that the constitution clearly debars him from it. What is all this? I think that we can save Ghana this mess. And it's going to be important for all the political parties, not the NPP alone, all the political parties, to commit themselves to sanitizing the political process. You understand? We need to sanitize this political process. If we don't, the consequences will be horrible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. Let me read a few of the messages that have come through before we look at this very important story as well. 4 teacher unions demand closure of schools. And on Facebook, we have a few messages coming through. Okay, well, my internet is messing up. Let me just read. Okay, right, it's back. So on Facebook, we have... okay, let me just do the WhatsApp messages. Good morning to you, KODA, and your panelists. Tell the NDC members that they did worse things in Talensi and their perpetual remembering of Ayawasu issue. The simple thing is that Ghanaians cannot vote for a dead goat again. Okay, aka Mugabe from Zebila sent in this one. This one says, Kwame, good morning to you. I think the police is to be blamed for not being able to arrest political criminals in this regime that we find ourselves in. We have, as a country, created a situation that has placed an impediment on the police to execute their mandate, all because of deadly politics that we are practicing. Haj Pfizer from Kaswa. This one says, please let us review the powers of the president in our constitution. It's simply too much, and they end up in office getting nothing done. Thank you. You didn't add your name. I'm 57.5 years old, and I've never seen what is happening in Ghana now before. In fact, Ghanaians must blame themselves for choosing Nana Akufo-Addo as the president of Ghana. Anyway, God is watching us all. Where is the chairman of National Peace Council? This one is from James K. Saba. This one says, good morning to you, Pan-African TV. I wish if the government could change NPP to MPP, which means, please. The shameless, frustrated, and hypocrites in MPP are going round lying to Ghanaians that ex-President Mahama will cancel the free SHS if voted into power. Ignore such nation records. They are not speaking the truth. Asanko from Santa Maria sent in this one. This one says, good morning to you, KO. The NPP agenda for compiling new voters register is manifesting with impunity. How would the December 2020 be? Ghanaians, we are doomed from Kwesi Tapa Abotwase district. This one also says, good morning to you, champion. I'm now sad about what is going on. Habib from Baba Tokuma. I hope I got it. Baba Tokuma, okay. Good morning to you, Kelly, and good morning to all your panelists, especially Mr. Pratt and Honorable Alhaji Fuseini. It is very disheartening to hear that a newly qualified teacher was murdered for no wrong done, but simply because he was suspected to be an NDC member. And then Akufo-Addo and his party have destroyed Ghana. Kofi Kumsin said it many times prior to the 2016 elections. We didn't listen. This is what we are experiencing. This one is from Gawawa in Aflao. Hi, Kwame. I think what's happening in Ghana now is about the failed government we voted for. Kobie Fijai, Kobie in Fijai, Takrade. I don't think the NDC should waste their time and energy advising these NPP people who believe they know everything under the sun. Okay, Asante sent this one in from Santa Maria. Listening to the National Youth Organizer yesterday, I totally agree with him, and we will also attack it. Well, I have my own reservations about that particular press conference. It's nebulous how the Akufo-Addo-led government is handling COVID-19 cases in the senior high schools in Ghana. They have prevented parents to visit their wards in the schools, but teachers and politicians who are in the same community, the parents leave, are allowed to visit the schools. Enoch from Mepe sent in this. So let me do a few Facebook messages before I come to Mr. Pratt. Honorable J says, Abdul Jalil Sonanyeli Tamale, good morning to you and your able panelists. The former president, John Dramani Mahama, should give us a break. If he could do something, he would have done that in 2016. Okay, right. John Tay says, watching you live from Sierra Leone. Dasafama says, MPP, Merigati, watching from Amsterdam. Theo says, the international community is laughing at us. Okanse Absalom says, good morning to you, KOD. Please tell Richard Asante that to really analyze the things properly and be honest with himself and to himself and Ghanaians. We are tired of the talk and just condemning things with the mouth and with their mouth and no action. Okay, it's very, very lengthy. This one is from Reverend Okanse from Kaswa. This one also, okay, well, the same person. Abubakar Siddiq Yusam. Good morning to you, KOD and the panelists. We all ought to know in this life, what we all ought to know is life is paramount and nobody has the right to take away another man's life. Domestic education teaches even you don't need to be educated. All right. Charles Thompson says, this is what happens when kleptocratic, okay, officials run the show in corrupt-ridden Ghana. Daniel Dagwe says, please, we are in for a big trouble in December 7th. Ibrahim Tahid says, I love you so much, comrade. It's okay. I think you sent this one to us on Facebook, on WhatsApp as well. I can't still understand the interest of this current president and why it's doing all these violent acts in Ghana. Shakespeare says, do people even know the implication of taking a life? Good morning to you, Kwame. I'm Jerry Koyaja, watching from Nkoko. For the MPP must be ashamed that the peace and security they promised us have now turned into blood. Edward Nyako says, have we learned from what happened in Ivory Coast with this kind of ruling from the Supreme Court? Wasa Akoda is Akoda Krum. In fact, NDC don't have any policy to offer Ghanaians, so they should keep their mouths shut. Ibrahim Washara says, nepotism in Ghana's politics. A lot of messages coming through on Facebook as well. Let's now listen to Mr. Pratt on this subject matter.
Which one?
The issue about...
the closure or...
Oh, okay. Well, actually, yeah, you dealt with the issue. So let's move on and discuss the teacher union issues. And Ghanaian Times actually reported that story. The story is on page 12 of the Ghanaian Times. But it says some teacher unions in the country have asked the government to shut down schools to curb the spread of the coronavirus disease. According to a joint statement issued by the Teachers and Educational Workers Union, National Association of Graduate Teachers, Ghana National Association of Teachers, and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers in Ghana, in Accra yesterday, the conditions and protocols which were to ensure the safety of teachers and students in the wake of the disease at the schools are either limited or just not there. It said, although those conditions upon which the decision to reopen schools looked formidable and assuring, the teacher unions were disappointed with the aftermath, which has resulted in rising confirmed cases in the schools. Mr. Pratt, I want to respectfully start with you on this one.
Well, I think what is significant is that all the these are the biggest trade unions in education, far the biggest. I mean, when they speak, the matter is ended. You're talking about NAGRA, National Association of Graduate Teachers. You're talking about the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT. And then you're talking about the Coalition of Concerned Teachers, and then you're also talking about the Teachers and Educational Workers Union of the TUC. So big. I mean, if you're looking at education, you know, below the tertiary level, these are the key, you know, stakeholders. I mean, as far as teachers are concerned and so on. And they are unanimous. The point is that they are unanimous. All of them agree that the opening of the schools has not been in the best interest of the country. Now, what are they saying? Very interesting things. They are saying that all the protocols which were announced have not been observed. They are saying, for example, that PPEs are either in short supply or in some of the schools they are not there at all. This is their statement. How reckless can we be that we open schools and the very protocols that we instituted in order to ensure safety was not done? PPEs are in short supply, or in some of the schools, they are not there at all. What have these innocent children done to be subjected to this death sentence? Yes, for many of the students, it is a death sentence, especially students with underlying conditions. You've sentenced them to death. What is the abiding need to open the schools today? It doesn't make sense. If you open the schools, so that these children will be able to write the examinations and move on to the next level, it becomes even more senseless because there are other alternatives. One of the alternatives is simply to do what has come to be known in educational circles as continuous assessment. These students, they were in school. They did a number of exams and so on. So you take those results, you aggregate them, and then you give them grades, which enables them to proceed to the next level. It is possible. It's also possible to ask tertiary institutions, like the training colleges, the universities, and so on, to do entrance examinations which serve as the basis for admitting the students to the next level. So it is not true that students can only move to the next level if we put them in the concentration camps in which they are today and force them to take exams. It simply doesn't make any sense at all. In any case, if we suspend schooling for 1 year, what would happen? Nigeria has done it. Nigeria's Minister of Education, Professor Adamu, says clearly that the life of the students is more important, protecting the lives of the students is more important than any other consideration. And therefore, Nigeria is willing to close schools for 1 year. Nigeria, our next door neighbors. Kenya has come to the same conclusions. Kenya says it is not reopening its schools simply because the lives of the students are more important than certificates and so on. Of course, the 4 teacher unions also made reference to what has happened in Israel, and they said that Ghana could learn from Israel and so on. I don't like doing that, simply because Israel is an apartheid state. An apartheid state can do no good, you understand? So I don't like doing that. But they mentioned Israel and so on, and that is significant. I mean, take the case of France. France reopened the schools. Yeah. First 3 days, the disease went. They quickly closed the schools and brought the children back. Yeah. Even in Britain, they had to think twice before reopening the schools and so on. What are we doing here? Our leaders are now telling us that, oh, as for the schools, they can't close them because the virus is now everywhere. Even if they come home, they will face the virus. Is that what they're telling us? Now they know that the virus is everywhere. And that the schools are not safe. They agree, but the homes too are not safe. We told them that this situation would arise. You know, from the very beginning, it was possible to do contact tracing and so on to keep the disease at bay because the disease was imported. We have relaxed our efforts to the extent that now if there's any imported disease, it's very, very small. The bulk of the disease now is transmitted in the community. And this is the most dangerous stage. It is now difficult to contain the disease. Last week, I was here predicting that we'll soon hit 20,000. We are hitting 30,000 now. As of yesterday, we had crossed the 25,000 mark. We were speeding towards 30,000. You understand? And 26,000 people infected with the disease is not a joke. It is not a joke, especially because now we are not doing random mass testing, so we don't know the full extent of the disease. There are so many people who may be dying out of this disease who are not being counted as victims of COVID. And you go to our communities, you know, the slums and so on. There are so many people who, when they die, within 3 to 4 hours, they have been buried. There's no post-mortem examination. Nobody worries about going to hospital and so on. Isn't it possible that some of those deaths are COVID-related and that we are not counting them? So if we have to look for the actual figure, it is even possible that we pass 50,000 heading towards 100,000. And look at what we are doing. And I am scared. I mean, this morning, I've seen statements attributed to the Minister of Health and his deputy. Isn't it the same Minister of Health who came and told us that he's tired and fed up with fighting COVID-19?
Yeah.
If he's tired and fed up with fighting COVID-19, what is he doing at that ministry? In any country, immediately he made that statement, he would have been encouraged to resign or be dismissed. In the midst of this pandemic, he says he's tired. Tired. You know, we have a big problem. Having reopened the schools and haven't allowed the disease to spread to the extent that it has reached. In Accra Girls alone, we are talking about something close to 60 infections in one school. And we haven't even finished the testing and so on. Now, just opening the gates of the schools and telling the children to go back home is not a very wise thing. There are so many things we have to do in order to ensure that the disease has not spread further. One, if you're going to release the students, you have to test all of them one by one. And you're talking about 1 million students. After testing them, you need to quarantine them for 2 weeks to make sure that they don't have the disease before you release them to the community. If you rush and open the gates and send them back to the community, my goodness, I don't want to predict what is going to happen. But the problem has been created for us. And the problem was created for us in spite of the fact that the government was giving wise counsel. Wise counsel by the Ghana Medical Association, wise counsel by a number of concerned Ghanaians and so on. And the wise counsel was ignored. This is where it has taken us.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. A few messages, and then I come to Richard and Honorable Minister. Good morning to you. Victimization under this government is severe and is killing us. Mr. Fuzi sent in this one. Good morning to you, KOD. Please, can we ask the EC to go to the isolation centers of COVID-19 and register the quarantined people? Prosper from Kuferidia sent in this one. This one also says, watching you from Agbogba. Government and GES by opening schools are causing the increase of COVID-19 cases. This one says, I'm 17-year-old girl and my name is Mary Danjuma from Ablekuma, Olebu, and I always have been in support of Mr. Pratt's view because whatever he's saying is true and government must take a critical look into all of the things that he's saying. Thank you. What does it profit a student if he or she passes the exams and dies before the results are released? This one also says, tell the Honorable Minister of Fuseini that he should stop the hypocrisy. Okay, thank you very much. NDC is more violent than NPP, you say. Good morning to you, KOD. Please, I need Mr. Asante's number. Thank you. Edem sent in this one. Good morning to you, KOD, and your panelists. All I want to say is that come December 2027, the NPP, Ibrahim in Techman, very strong message. Good morning to you, Pan-African Television. Regards to Honorable Minister Fuseini for the good work. We want to inform the NPP, whatever they are doing, we shall win the election. Ghana Police, we are warning them. Okay, good. The above video, okay, all right. John Enchi, Fiokuma Zongo Takra. Good morning to you, KO. The greetings to JM and Michael Otu, incoming MP. Okay, thank you very much. This one says, campaigning at a registration center. Please, is this allowed? Okay, you've sent the video of the MP. Good morning to you, KO. The EC is causing more harm. Skydom in Awashi. The message is quite long. Thank you, Mr. Pratt, for clarifying your comment concerning the suspension of the 2020 elections. Yeah, from Accra, sent in this one. Let me come to Richard Asante.
Thank you very much, my brother. I think that based on science and also based on what we've known of coronavirus and also listening to the WHO and in terms of the advocacy and the information that has been churned out there, we are made to believe that coronavirus is going to exist between now to the next 4 years or 3 years until a vaccine is found. And even if the vaccine is found, you will not all of a sudden have a total global impact immediately. You have to take through, it will go to a lot of testing and all that. Now I know we started a test in South Africa, Brazil and other places by a UK-based company. But what is so relevant is that if we are looking at this, that's going to persist within the next 3 to 4 years, we cannot hang our lives and also not act on our lives because there is coronavirus. I do believe that we need to find a way of living around the disease, and those are the things that this government has been interested in. Finding ways of making sure that we protect the citizenry, making sure that we also live our lives, though it will not be as normal, because I'm not sure that in our normal times we would have nose mask and all these things on our faces, sitting on TVs and also going about our daily activities. What is of relevant is that we ought to be careful outside the protocols, but make sure that we continuously live our lives. Let's look at the data and also what we know of the coronavirus in our schools at the moment. My brother, we are told that as we speak, we have close to 1 million students on our various campuses learning. We have in excess of 580,000 SSS, or what do you call the SHS students. We have about 90,000 teachers, non-teaching staff. We are looking at about 90,000 or so. Because we are looking at those cooks, security guards, and all those people that will also come into the number. We are looking at the final years of the JHS, also about 750,000. So we are all these populations. We are looking at close to about 1.5 million people at schools and also learning currently to write their final exams. We know of the SHS graduates starting their exams on Monday. So meaning that they've already gone through the process, they've studied, they've done some classes here and there, and we're expecting them to start the exams on Monday, which we wish all of them all the best. But there's one fundamental thing we need to understand. Are we supposed to, must we as a matter of necessity shut everything down because there's one incident or two incidents of coronavirus in any particular place? Looking at these numbers and looking at the fact that we have about 11,000 schools across the country. Now we have about, out of the 11,000, we have about 30 schools that have seen 1 or 2 cases. The highest so far we've seen is Accra, that is about 55. Then we know of incidents in a school in Volta region, Bishop Herman, and also other places, one in Kumasi, and I think there was one that came from the north, but later on we understood was not true. But so in all, we are looking at about 80 to 900, let's say at the moment even 100 students that have contracted the disease. Do we shut the schools?
More than 100.
And so as the data I knew back from about on Wednesday, and yesterday was Wednesday, we're looking at about 88 people. So now let's even assume that it's 100. Let's say it's 200. Must we shut the schools down because we have 100 students contracting the disease when we are looking at in excess of 1 or close to 1.1 or 1.5 million, or say 1 million student population and non-teaching staff? Remember, this data that I gave includes teaching and non-teaching staffs, or the various schools, not only students. So it tells you that we will rush into taking certain decisions and jeopardize the lives of the students and also even the lives of this country. So these are the things that we need to understand. Let's look at multimedia. What's the total number of multimedia? I'm not sure they are in any of this, but we have in excess of 10 people from their station contracting the disease. We know of other institutions that they have. Can we literally shut down everything? you put in measures to remedy the situation. But shutting down the schools is not on, and we cannot do that. Let's protect the students. Let them allow them to. There was a woman that at one of the local stations interviewed, and the comment was that before my child went to school, she was helping me sell water at the market because she has to assist. Now she goes to school to go and learn, and everybody's saying bring the child home. When the child comes, I'm not putting the child in my house. He's going out with me. So the disease could be anywhere. So she supports the idea that the child should be in the school, learn, but there ought to be care.
That's a very irresponsible parent.
There ought to be care. And the school authorities ought to observe those protocols, and the child ought to follow that. And you see, we are looking at, you see, we are acting like before coronavirus or during the period of lockdown, or right after the government lifted the lockdown in Accra and certain parts of the country, these children were quarantined. They were not. They were within the society undergoing the activity. Some of them contracted the diseases in their various homes. We heard people saying that, oh, then you have to test every one of them before they go to school. But there's one thing that people have not addressed their minds to. You can test somebody today and the person will be negative. But within the next 20 minutes, before the result comes, the person's situation might have changed. So even testing while the person was on the way to school, the person can contract the disease on the way to school. So there are no guarantees but to observe the protocols and be extra careful. And those are the things that we need to understand. Mr. Pratt mentioned the comment that was attributed to the health minister about being tired and being fed up. I've heard the minister come forth on various platforms to deny the fact that he never made those comments. So I think we need to take those comments and put it aside, since he has denied that, to be fair to him, and also the fact that he said he has never said that. And for media reportage, I know even today we have cause to look at even some of them, what you were condemned was even on front pages being attributed to you. People write things and misquote people and all that. So those ones can be put away. So for me, my thinking is that let's allow our lives to go on. Because you see, the time we shut the schools down, we have not even gotten to 1,000. And these numbers are not going to go down. And we have, by the grace of God, we have a situation where we have 25,000 cases, and the recovery stroke discharge this rate has gotten to over 21,000. Right. So now those that we have as active cases are about 3,800 thereabouts. Right. So it tells you that we are doing something better, but let's be extra careful and continue with our
Thank you. What Uncle Kwesi is saying is very true. I have a friend and her mother died 3 weeks ago. Looking at the symptoms, there was COVID, but up until now, the test has not come, and the woman is going to be buried this weekend. A lot of people are dying of COVID-19, which is not reported. This one says, good morning to you, Kwame. MPP, okay, well, it's very, I'm watching you live from Birmingham in UK. Schools and are still closed. I'm a student of mental health nursing, and we're still at home doing online programs. We were supposed to be on placement, but have been called off and has been replaced for an online program to cover 120 credit hours. Ghanaian leadership, long live Comrade Kwesi Pratt. Please tell him I'd like to pay for a 2-day holiday trip to Royal Sechi or Aqua Safari if he chooses any. I know he can afford, but I want to do it for him. Thank you. Ajay Danny says, okay, this one says, good morning, watching you live in South Africa. My lovely Mr. Pratt, God bless you. Tell him I will take care of his ticket or hotel bills the day he decides to come to South Africa. Dawood sent in this one. Okay, right. Honorable, please.
Well, you see, Tedros Ghebreyesus says that many countries are heading in the wrong direction. And many countries are giving mixed messages, which is making the fight against the coronavirus pandemic difficult. Ghana is one of them. Ghana is one of them because when the president took the decision to open the schools, they sounded the warning. There was a caution. Make sure that you put in place systems that will prevent the transmission of the coronavirus in the schools. Because it was between the devil and the deep blue sea. The students have to go to school, but we have coronavirus. What do we do? Today, they have gone to school. And we have seen that they are not being infected at an alarming rate. The parent-teacher associations have called for the closure of the schools and the return of the students. The Director General of Ghana Education Service says, oh, it's going to be impossible to close the schools. Because if the students are already infected with the coronavirus, how do we integrate them with their families? So what you see, I say it's been between the sea and the hard rock. Because you don't know what to do now. And that is the wrong direction government had taken. By not thinking through the implications. Because whatever happens today, the students will write their exam. Not so. When they finish their exam, will they stay in the school?
They'll go home.
They'll go home. So you see? See? If it is because you think that the students must write the exam, they will finish. And they'll go home. If they're infected in the school, they'll take it to their family. But I tell you as a matter of fact that it was not because of the examination that the schools were opened. No.
Why?
To enable the SSS students to register.
Oh, how do you know that?
Oh, that, you see, you don't know this government. You must study this government to know MPP.
They could have registered in their various homes.
There is no decision the MPP makes in this country without appreciating the political benefit that it will bring to them. There's no decision. There's no decision, Richard. I've studied the MPP and I can tell you, there is no decision. Why? You know, they didn't think that the schools will open. So Electoral Commission itself did not gazette secondary schools as centers of registration for the purpose of the exercise. They didn't. But somehow, your party people told them, what are you doing? How can we do SSS, free SSS, and not register students? The Electoral Commission itself was forced to engage in an illegality by declaring schools as registration centers when they are not gazetted. So, well, we can only pray.
Thank you.
In the midst of all these things, we ask that everybody should take the protective measures. Wear your masks, wash your hands. In fact, stay at home if need be. But if you have to go out, make sure that you keep a safe distance. Because that is the only way. Government ministers are being attacked by coronavirus. What about you and I?
Thank you very much, Honorable Inusah. My time is up, but let me just say a special good morning to you, Chairman Budu, who is the chairman for NDC in Infantiman constituency, aka Tompo. You are watching us this morning. You did a very good job for the constituency. Keep it up. We are proud of you. And also, Dipku Ishmael, Wow Traffic. You've sent a very long message. Unfortunately, my time is up. I cannot read it for you. All the messages, those of you who send messages from Saudi Arabia, from Germany, from France, I've seen all of them. I cannot read all of those messages because of time. Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt, for your time today. Thank you very kindly, Richard Asante. And certainly, thank you very, very, very much, Honorable Inusah Fuseini, who is causing a great storm up north. Thank you very much for your time today. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a very wonderful day. Salute.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and the champion of liberty, of human equality. Let's salute him, fellow Ghanaians, the nation's founder, Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah. May God bless him, Ghana showboy, Africa's great song, Sergeant Dr. Nkrumah.
My name is Samuel Obriaduama, Ridge Royal Hotel Cape Coast General Manager. We are ready